broadly speaking, in Britain, we had the 14 years of so-called Tory austerity, which immediately followed and sprang from the financial crisis. George Osborne's cliche about, the Labour should have mended the roof while the sun was shining. Well, now the sun's not shining, so let's demolish the house, which was basically, his attitude. And in America, there was a period of moderately successful economic recovery from 2008 under Obama. Then there was an excessive boom in the first few years of Trump, followed obviously, by the bust of COVID. And then you had the sort of inflation, and basically governments did not function very well.
We had Brexit as well in there somewhere.
And you had Brexit. Oh, yeah, I didn't even mention that. So you had the political system, far from improving itself, has deteriorated further.
Almost damaging to the system.
And become more damaging to the economy. And of course, we're seeing that in spectacular fashion in America with all the kind of craziness of Trump and the tariffs and so on. I think we're seeing it in a less spectacular, but in a way equally serious or even more insidious way here in Britain, because what we've had is an election almost a year ago now, in which you had a new party coming in promising to change everything. Their manifesto, it just had one word on the cover of the Labour manifesto, which was change. The night of the election, the day after, I sent out a note to the clients of my consulting firm saying, this is going to be a classic case where you have a promise of change, but I started off with a quote from a famous Italian novel called The Leopard about the transformation of Italy from a feudal system to a kind of more advanced nation in the late 19th century. And it's this aristocrat who's writing from his own personal point of view. How am I going to preserve my wealth and my rights in Sicily when the whole world says? And he says, everything must change so that everything can stay the same. And that's what I said, basically, the Labour government represented. They claim everything's going to change, but actually everything's going to stay the same because, the names of the ministers would change. But the key thing that they were sticking to, sticking to two key mistakes that the previous government had made for the previous decade. One was the break with Europe, which occurred, as a result of Brexit, obviously, and which has fundamentally weakened the economy. And the second was these crazy fiscal rules, which they imposed on themselves and which they declared to be the sole guiding light or the dominant objective of all their economic policies was to stick to these fiscal rules, which meant that they were going to follow policy exactly similar, not just analogous, but exactly similar to the austerity policy of George Osborne.
Is it neoliberalism that they've stuck to?
And that was an Indian, and that's a really key. So what it was a recognition, or at least a decision by the government here in Britain, that actually the fundamentals of the economy that had preceded 2008, the preoccupation with bond markets and debts and all that kind of thing, were going to remain and were in fact going to become the bedrock of their whole economic policy. So that's what we've had in Britain. In America, obviously, especially with Trump, we've had another aspect of that, which is, another kind of fundamental principle of the 30 years from 2008 to 2000 and from 1980 till 2008 was the rich must get richer. We can't make the tax system more redistributive, and we've got to constantly put downward pressure on government spending as a way of trying to maintain some kind of budget balance rather than allowing the revenues in America. America has a revenue problem. Their revenues to the government are about 10% lower relative to GDP than in any other advanced country, and they're completely committed to that. So that's another aspect in which the kind of fundamental economic assumptions that preceded 2008 have not been revised either in America or in Britain, or for that matter in Europe, until very recently.
This was a clip from our chat with economist Anatol Koletsky about what's going on in the global economy. To watch the full episode, click right here.